Officer Rodriguez was responding to the same corner for the third time this week. Homeless man causing a disturbance, the complaint read. But when he approached Tommy Rodriguez, something made him stop. The man's posture, the old fire in his eyes, and the metal insignia on his backpack. Navy SEAL Trident. Rodriguez had grown up in a military family. He knew what that insignia meant. And how could someone living on the streets possess such honor? The corner of 5th and Madison had become Tommy Rodriguez's world. Not the famous intersection in Manhattan, but a forgotten stretch in downtown Phoenix where the city's invisible gathered. For 3 years, this had been home, a concrete square next to a bus stop, shaded by a dying tree that offered little protection from the Arizona sun. Tommy wasn't like the other homeless men who rotated through the area. He didn't panhandle aggressively, didn't shout at passers-by, and never bothered anyone. He simply existed, day after day, with a military precision that most people never noticed. He woke at 0530, same as he had for 20 years in the Navy. He kept his small camp organized, clean, and operational. His possessions fit into a single black backpack. Army surplus, not Navy, but it had served him well for 5 years on the streets. A sleeping bag, 2 changes of clothes, basic hygiene supplies, a water bottle, and hidden in the bottom corner, wrapped in a plastic bag, was his most precious possession. Something he couldn't bring himself to sell, even when hunger made him desperate. Tommy was 45 years old, but looked older. 3 years of sleeping rough had weathered his face, and his brown hair had gone prematurely gray at the temples. But beneath the worn exterior, anyone with military experience would recognize the signs. Perfect posture even when sitting, eyes that constantly scanned for threats, and hands that remained steady despite everything he'd lost. The complaints about Tommy had started recently, not because his behavior had changed, but because the neighborhood was gentrifying. New businesses, new residents, new demands that the city clean up the area. Officer Carlos Rodriguez had been assigned to handle the situation, though he wasn't sure what exactly needed handling. Rodriguez himself was third-generation law enforcement from a family with deep military roots. His grandfather had served in Korea, his father in Vietnam, and his older brother was currently deployed with the Army in Germany. He understood the unspoken code of respect for those who had served, which is why, when he approached Tommy that Thursday morning, he noticed things other officers might have missed. Officer Rodriguez parked his patrol car and approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. Tommy looked up but didn't move from his seated position against the wall. Their eyes met, and Rodriguez felt something he hadn't expected, a flash of recognition, not of the person, but of the type of man he was looking at. "Morning," Rodriguez said. "I'm Officer Rodriguez. Mind if we talk?" Tommy nodded once. "Morning, officer. No problem." The voice was clear, intelligent, with none of the slurred speech or agitation Rodriguez often encountered on these calls. This man was alert, present, and respectful. "I've had some complaints about this corner," Rodriguez continued, keeping his tone conversational rather than confrontational. "Nothing specific, just general concerns from local businesses." "I understand," Tommy replied. "I try to keep a low profile, but I know my presence makes some people uncomfortable." Rodriguez was struck by the man's articulation and self-awareness. This wasn't someone lost in addiction or mental illness. This was someone who understood exactly where he was and why. "How long have you been staying here?" Rodriguez asked. 3 years, 2 months, 16 days, Tommy answered without hesitation. The precision of the answer made Rodriguez pause. Military habits died hard, the tendency to track time, location, and status with obsessive accuracy. "You mind if I ask your name?" "Tommy Rodriguez." "Same as yours, looks like?" Rodriguez smiled slightly. "Yeah, noticed that. Where are you from originally, Tommy?" "San Diego. Coronado specifically. Rodriguez's attention sharpened. Coronado was home to the Navy SEAL training facility. "You serve?" Tommy's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. 20 years. Retired in 2018. "Which branch?" Tommy hesitated, then pointed to his backpack. Rodriguez followed his gaze and saw it, a small metal insignia pinned to the fabric. Even from a distance, he recognized the distinctive shape. Navy SEAL Trident. Rodriguez felt the world shift slightly. He was looking at a member of the most elite military unit in the world, sitting homeless on a Phoenix Street corner. "Fuck," he whispered, then immediately apologized. "Sorry, sir. I wasn't expecting—" "It's okay," Tommy said quietly. "Most people don't." Rodriguez sat down on the sidewalk next to Tommy. Police protocol be damned. This wasn't a situation for official procedures. "Can I ask what happened?" Rodriguez said. "How does a SEAL end up—" "Homeless?" Tommy finished. "It's not a short story. I've got time." Tommy was quiet for several minutes, watching the morning traffic build. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone who had rarely told this story. "I did 6 deployments between 2003 and 2017. Iraq, Afghanistan, some places that aren't on any official record. Lost 11 teammates over those years. Good men, all of them." Rodriguez listened without interrupting. "When I got out in 2018, I thought the hard part was over. I had my pension, my benefits, a skill set that should have translated to civilian work. But nobody tells you how to turn off 20 years of hypervigilance, how to sleep without checking your 6, how to trust that the world isn't trying to kill you." Tommy pulled his knees up to his chest, making himself smaller. "I tried regular jobs, security, military contracting, even teaching tactical courses. But I'd have panic attacks, flashbacks, episodes where I'd think I was back in Kandahar or Ramadi. Employers don't want to deal with that kind of unpredictability." "What about VA support?" Tommy's laugh was bitter. "The VA is overwhelmed. You wait months for appointments, get prescribed medications that turn you into a zombie, and sit in group therapy with guys who don't understand what special operations does to your head." Rodriguez was beginning to understand the scope of the problem. "I lost my apartment first, couldn't hold a steady job, couldn't make rent. Moved in with my sister for a while, but my nightmares were keeping her kids awake. She asked me to leave, nicely, but still." "What about your SEAL teammates?" "That's complicated. Some of them are doing great, civilian careers, families, successful transitions. Others are struggling just like me. But there's this code, where you don't admit weakness. SEALs are supposed to be invincible. Asking for help feels like admitting you're not really a SEAL anymore." Tommy touched the trident on his backpack. "This insignia represents the hardest thing I've ever done. 2 years of training, 5 years of deployments, missions that I can't talk about even now. But it also represents a version of myself that doesn't exist anymore. I'm not that warrior. I'm just a broken veteran who can't figure out how to live in a world without enemies to fight." "Tommy," Rodriguez said carefully, "can I ask about your service record?" Tommy looked at him for a long moment. "What's your security clearance, officer?" "I don't have one. Local police." "Then I can't tell you specifics, but my team spent a lot of time in places where Americans weren't supposed to be, doing things that never made the news." Rodriguez understood. Special operations often involved classified missions. "I can tell you about one mission, Afghanistan 2015. My team was tasked with extracting a CIA asset from Taliban-controlled territory. We were compromised, outnumbered 20-1. Tommy's eyes went distant, remembering. "We held that position for 14 hours. When extraction finally came, my team, 3 of us survived out of 8. Tommy pulled out his phone and showed Rodriguez a photo. 8 men in desert camouflage, arms around each other, smiling despite obvious exhaustion. That's my team: Davis, Martinez, Williams, Jackson, Thompson. Good men who died for a mission that officially never happened. Rodriguez stared at the photo, understanding the weight Tommy carried. The mission was classified at the highest levels. No Purple Hearts, no Silver Stars, no public recognition. I can't even explain why it mattered when people ask what I did in the military. With a record like that, how are you not getting help? Rodriguez asked. Tommy's expression hardened. Because the system isn't designed for people like me. When I applied for disability benefits, they wanted documentation of my injuries, my PTSD. But half my service record is classified. The VA can't access it, can't verify it. Rodriguez felt anger building on Tommy's behalf. The psychologists they assigned me had never worked with special operations personnel. They didn't understand combat stress from sustained classified operations. Tommy looked directly at Rodriguez. I spent 2 years cycling through temporary jobs, cheap apartments, VA appointments that led nowhere. But background checks revealed my mental health struggles and inability to discuss my military experience. What was the final straw? 6 months ago, I was working security at an office building. One evening, there was a car backfire. Sounded like gunfire. I hit the deck, started shouting tactical commands. Building management fired me the next day. After that, I couldn't make rent, couldn't find another job. The choice was homelessness or suicide. You chose to survive. I chose to keep fighting, even if the battlefield looks different now. What's a typical day like for you now? Rodriguez asked. Tommy seemed surprised by the question. Most people didn't want to know the details. I wake up at 05:30, same as always. Shower at the Homeless Services Center twice a week. Breakfast at the Catholic Mission downtown. Lunch and dinner at the Salvation Army. Tommy showed Rodriguez a small notebook he kept. I track everything: daily expenses, weather patterns, police patrol schedules, safe places to sleep. Military planning habits don't disappear. Rodriguez flipped through the notebook. It was meticulously organized. Do you have contact with other veterans? Some. There's an informal network. We look out for each other, share information about resources. But homelessness is isolating. Tommy pointed to a man across the street, also clearly homeless. That's Johnson, former Marine, lost his leg to an IED, got addicted to pain medication. The system failed him too. What do you need most? Tommy thought for a moment. Stability, a place to sleep safely, mental health services that understand military trauma, and a chance to use my skills in a way that gives my life meaning again. Rodriguez sat in silence, processing everything. He had come to respond to a complaint, but found a decorated war hero failed by the system. Tommy, I have a problem. I came here because businesses want you moved along, but after hearing your story, I don't want to make your situation worse. Tommy nodded. I understand your position, officer. Maybe there's another way. My brother worked with a veteran services organization that specifically helps special operations personnel. They are run by former SEALs, Green Berets, Rangers. Tommy looked interested for the first time. They help with housing, employment, mental health services. But more importantly, they provide a community of people who understand what you've been through. Rodriguez pulled out his phone. The local coordinator is a former SEAL Team 3 guy, had similar struggles with transition. Now he helps other special operations veterans. What's the catch? No catch. You call him, tell him Officer Carlos Rodriguez referred you. No paperwork, no government involvement. Tommy stared at the phone number Rodriguez wrote down. What if it doesn't work? Then you're exactly where you are now. But what if it does work? Tommy looked at the SEAL Trident on his backpack. I earned this. I earned the right to be treated with dignity. Yes, you did. Tommy took the piece of paper. What about the complaints? I'll handle that. I'll explain that you're a veteran in need of assistance and that the community should be helping you, not pushing you away. Tommy smiled slightly, the first genuine smile Rodriguez had seen. Thank you, Officer Rodriguez, for seeing me as a person instead of a problem. Thank you for your service, Tommy. I mean that. I'll make the call. 6 months later, Officer Carlos Rodriguez was patrolling the same neighborhood when he saw a familiar figure. Tommy Rodriguez was walking out of a small office building wearing clean clothes and carrying a briefcase. He looked healthier, more confident, more like the warrior he had always been. "Tommy!" Rodriguez called out. Tommy turned and smiled. "Officer Rodriguez, good to see you." "How are things going?" "Better, much better. The Veteran Services Organization helped me get housing, connected me with a therapist who understands military trauma, and found me a job with a defense contractor doing security consulting." Rodriguez felt a surge of satisfaction. "That's outstanding." "More importantly," Tommy continued, "they connected me with other Special Operations veterans who have been through similar struggles. I'm not alone anymore." "What kind of work are you doing?" "I'm training security personnel for companies operating in high-risk environments, teaching them tactical awareness, threat assessment, crisis management. Turns out 20 years of Special Operations experience is valuable in the civilian world when you know how to present it." Tommy looked back at the corner where Rodriguez had first found him. "I also volunteer with the same organization that helped me. I work with other homeless veterans, help them navigate the system, connect them with resources. My experience on the streets actually makes me more effective at reaching people who have given up on getting help." Rodriguez was impressed but not surprised. Once a SEAL, always a SEAL. "The mission just looks different now. Instead of fighting enemies overseas, I'm fighting the battle to save veterans at home." Tommy handed Rodriguez a business card. "If you ever encounter other veterans in crisis, call me directly. Day or night. No bureaucracy, no paperwork, just one veteran helping another." Rodriguez looked at the card. "Thomas Rodriguez, Veteran Outreach Coordinator, Special Operations Transition Services." "Tommy, I have to ask, do you ever think about what might have happened if I had just followed standard procedure that day? If I had moved you along instead of listening?" Tommy was quiet for a moment. "I think about it every day. That conversation saved my life, Officer Rodriguez. Not just because of the phone number you gave me, but because you reminded me that my service mattered, that my story was worth hearing." "Your story deserved to be heard." The problem is, there are thousands of veterans with similar stories who haven't had someone stop and listen. Veterans who are still sitting on street corners, still falling through the cracks, still fighting battles that nobody acknowledges. Tommy looked directly at Rodriguez. "That's why I do this work now. Because every veteran deserves what you gave me that day: dignity, respect, and a chance to be seen as a hero instead of a problem." As Rodriguez watched Tommy walk away, he thought about the power of simply stopping, listening, and recognizing the humanity in people that society had forgotten. Sometimes the most important police work had nothing to do with law enforcement and everything to do with understanding that behind every problem was a person with a story worth hearing. Sometimes heroes don't wear capes or uniforms. Sometimes they wear dirty clothes and carry everything they own in a backpack. Sometimes the most decorated warriors become invisible, not because they chose to disappear, but because we chose not to see them. So I ask you, have you ever walked past someone without seeing their story? Have you ever encountered a veteran who needed recognition more than charity, understanding more than judgment? Share their story in the comments. Tell us their name. Because here on the Veteran Chronicles, we believe every veteran's service deserves acknowledgement, and every person's story deserves to be heard. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, subscribe and share it. Help us make sure that heroes like Tommy Rodriguez are never invisible again. We'll see you in the next story. And until then, if you ever see someone who looks forgotten by the world, remember, they might be carrying more honor than you know.